Hi there, everyone, and welcome back to the Happy Meter podcast. As always, I'm your co-host, Kevin, joined with my dear friend, Justin, for what's going to be actually a really special episode of the Happy Meter podcast. For anyone tuning in for the first time, remember that the name The Happy Meter is rooted in Justin's philosophy that we need to strive for balance between our life's passions and joys with financial wellness and stability. So it's all about figuring out what moves that needle, what makes you truly happy. Today, I know that we're going to start with a review and all that kind of thing, but Justin is going to be sharing something that really moves his happy meter. And also, we're going to try to link some of our passions together in a way that I think is going to be pretty innovative. I'm excited about it. First off, Justin, how are you? I love this fleece. I don't know what you would call that. What exactly is that garment you're wearing?
Well, I wanted to, set the mood for walking in the Redwood National Forest with the dense fog kind of coming in and these beautiful 300-foot trees coming all around us. And so I wore flannel today.
Nice. I love that in a Baltimore August where it's hot, humid, it's like 96 degrees outside. My room is boiling. That we're about to be guided into a foggy, autumnal, misty space. That sounds good. Let's dive right into it. I know that we wanted to recap our last episode, which we both agreed was maybe one of our better content episodes. We talked about investments, risk tolerance, all that kind of stuff. Do you want to lead a quick recap for us?
Yeah, so last week was entitled, the episode was called Investment 101. So it was kind of the basic foundation of investing. So we went really down to the hardwired differences between cash, stocks, and bonds and all that. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, I highly advise you listen to that episode before this one. So it's called Investment 101. But just on a quick, 1 minute recap. So we spoke about a few things. One was you got to identify your goals, risk tolerance, and timeline if you want to invest correctly between cash, stocks, and bonds. And we know that cash is for short-term needs, emergency funds, purchases you need within the next 6 months. We want to leave that in cash. You're not going to make any money on cash. You're actually losing value because of inflation, but we don't want to take any risk at all with money we need in the short term. The second thing we spoke about was bonds. Bonds is when you lend money to companies or the government and they give you interest in return. Those are typically a little bit more stable, a little less volatile than stocks, but it does provide at least some form of growth compared to cash. And then the last piece was stocks. And stocks is when you own a company or a small, tiny share of a company. And historically, a collection of stocks in a mutual funds or index funds that match the S&P 500 have gained more traction over a 10, 20, 30-year span. So any long-term money that we won't need in the next few years, 5, 10 years, having it in a high stock portfolio makes the most sense. We talked about don't investing money we need for the short term in stocks. We spoke about the importance of automating and never timing the market. So every month, every week, every paycheck, you are constantly paying yourself and you're putting it into funds, whether it's stocks or bonds that are aligned to your risk tolerance and timeline. We spoke about diversifying your portfolio so that you don't own just one individual stock. We want to diversify and own many of them, just in case one stock didn't perform well or crashes. We certainly don't want our entire net worth and retirement in that one basket. There will be market downturns in the time of your investing career. You just have to know that going into it, and you've got to be able to stay the course. Emotional intelligence always makes the best investors. And then the final piece that we really spoke about was if you are not knowledgeable around this stuff and don't have the time to research it, if you've never stomached a 2008, right, investing could be challenging. And so this is something you may want a coach or a financial advisor to guide you on. And I highly suggest a fiduciary fee-only advisor who's going to keep your interests aligned to theirs. So that was a kind of a quick recap.
Oh, and a great one. And some of what we're going to do today is going to link all of those key takeaways back together in a new way. But I did want to shout you out, Justin, that one of the great things that you've done for me that I know you've learned and benefited from through Warren Buffett, who's that legendary investor, but this notion that we will have significant highs and significant lows, and you got to ride the waves. That same thing about emotional intelligence. And so one thing you've always helped me with is to conceive of and look at real data about difficult times. And you already mentioned 2008 is one of them. But then you're always able to show me if you have this much invested, not only would you have lost a lot, but if you ride it out, if you stay committed, stay the course, keep investing, that you'll make it out even better. Did you want to give us an example of like 2008 in our lifetime is really probably the most devastating market turn? I think that's just accurate. I think it's a fact. But so could you talk us through an example of what that experience would have been for us as investors if we were investing at that time?
Yeah. So let's just say you had 100% stocks at that period of time. So let's just say all your money was in the S&P 500, which is owning a weighted cap index of the top 500 companies in the United States at that time. Okay. Let's just say you invest at that a day before the market starts to go down in 2008, before we start seeing the trend going down. Let's say you had $500,000 in your retirement account. Okay. At that period of time over the next year, the market would have dropped 38%. The S&P dropped 38%. That sounds just like a number, but let's just put this actual in perspective with actual numbers and data. That $500,000 would have lost $185,000.
Oof.
And your account would have been sitting at $315,000.
So from $500,000 from 500,000 in 1 year, we actually dropped down from 500,000 to only 315,000.
Yes, and that was one of the worst times that being in the stock market would have been. You would have to figure out how to stomach that. I can't tell you how many people got nervous and scared and kept seeing the headlines like it's gonna keep getting worse, and so many people jumped off the ship then. So you lost your money, right? Significant value of your money, and then decided to jump ship, meaning you sold your stock, and now you had 500,000. Now you're sitting at 315 and you have cash because you just sold out. That would be the worst thing you could do, because remember, this money is for the long term. I'm never going to be 100% stock if I need it in the short term. So I know at this period of time, this is not something that is unnormal. This is going to happen. So the point here is, if you rode this wave out and you did not sell, you would have broke even about 4 to 5 years later. 2012 or so, the market returned to about what it was in 2008. If you continued to hold on to that, didn't sell, didn't contribute, did nothing, okay, your original amount would have doubled today, a little bit more than doubled today. So again, what's important about this is a long 10, 20, 30-year timeline is where we want our stocks. You are going to have down markets. You might see a 38% drop in your portfolio. I'm telling you, in the next 30 years, you will. The point is that if you are investing in stock, it's for the long term, and it's okay to have those downturns. And Kevin, what's amazing about this is if you kept investing all throughout that downturn, didn't even pay attention to it, and just kept contributing your 403B as you were teaching, you would have had about 4 times your money from the downturn at where it was at the lowest to where it is now. It's been about times 4. So what's amazing about this is that if you just keep your strategy of finding the gap, putting in over and over and over again, those downturns are a wonderful thing for you because you can profit from those.
Yeah.
And just another example, Kev, I'll let you jump in there. We just went through a small version of this 4 months ago. COVID happened. The market dropped around 30%. So to put in this perspective, let's just say you just started investing in February. You put $1,000 of the first $1,000 you saved. Like, this is a big deal. Like, you got your emergency fund set, you put $1,000 in here. You're nervous. You've never invested before. COVID happens. The market drops 30%. Your $1,000 drops $300, and now you're at $700. And if you just starting out, that's a big deal for you to stomach.
Oh, it's devastating. Yeah.
Now, what's amazing today, about a few minutes before this recording, the stock market returned to an all-time high. So you would have now be even at that 1,000. And if you invested all the way down in March, April, May, when the market was down, you would have been able to profit a lot of money from this, and you'd be up some money now. So what's key piece here is that investing in stocks is for the long term, because this will happen again. We only invest money for the long term in the stock market. I think I said that about 100 times already.
You sure? But that's how we know it was important. Yep. Yeah, I think for me, the key takeaway is always we need to ride the waves. We need to be, as you said, long term. And this is where, for someone like me who does feel like he works really hard for his money and wants to make sure he's doing the right thing, to, as you said, automate my contributions so I'm not even thinking about it. And then when that market's down, what you're really saying is we need to reframe our mindsets, that we shouldn't see that as the world is ending, the sky is falling, oh my goodness. That instead reframe your mindset and say, I get to buy stocks at a discount. How great is that? And just keep that automated payment going. Is that about right?
Absolutely. And one thing I always hear when I say something like that, Kevin, is like, oh, but I'm retiring in 2-3 years. Well, you shouldn't have been 100% stock if you need that money, right? So if you're 52 and you're retiring at 55, you shouldn't have all your money all in stock if you need to live on it at 55. You had the wrong allocation choice. It's not because the stock market, because you had too much in the stock market, right? So it's really important that make sure your goals, your risk tolerance, what you can stomach, are all aligned to what you decide to invest in, whether it's cash, bonds, stocks, or a combination of those.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, now shifting into what we wanted to do today. I know that, Justin, you had this amazing experience in California, right? That's where Redwood is?
Yes.
Yes, you had this amazing experience. And while you were walking around, pardon me for getting a phone call there. And while you were walking around Redwood National Park, you were constantly inspired. And you were kind enough when you came back to share that some of that was an impact of our friendship, our relationship, and our dynamic.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned so much from you, especially in this realm of personal finance, as well as many others. And you were generous enough to say that my passions for narrative, for theater, for storytelling, and then, of course, metaphor, figurative language, everything else, that had an impact on you and your experience.
Yeah.
So here, I think I want to kick it over to you and have you describe for our audience, what is it that we're going to be doing today? What are we hoping to achieve?
So about a month or two ago, when school got out, I decided that I was going to fly out to California. My girlfriend and I, we went out, of course, Southwest only, flew in with our companion pass, and we landed in San Jose. And our goal was to do a road trip around the northern part of California. So this included Redwood National Park. Then we went to Lassen, which is a huge peak in the northern section of California. Then we went to Lake Tahoe, and then we ended at Yosemite. So we had a really beautiful trip around. But our first stop was Redwood. And what we did is we drove all the way from San Francisco and about 7 or 8 hours up the coast. And Redwoods is about 7 or 8 hours north, right on the coast of California in the northern part. But what's amazing about Redwoods is as you're driving, it's really hot. And then as you get close to Redwoods, it's in this perfect place where there's a mix of heat and also really cold air that's coming from the north. And it creates this small section of the United States that has this amazing environment that fosters these massive trees because of the perfect temperatures and the way that the fog and the mist is able to kind of circulate there. And so when you drive in there, what you see is massive, beautiful, tall, just very special trees all over the place. I mean, you can't imagine anything like this, but to put in perspective, this is like me. And if I opened up my arms all the way, it'd be like 6 or 8 of us in a circle around one of these trees. It's like something I've never seen before. And when you look up in the sky, 300 feet tall are some of these trees. They're the tallest in the world. You can't see the tops. So they're just amazing. And it's one of my favorite national parks. It's relatively flat. It's just a lot of wonderful walking. And when you're walking in there, it's really easy to get lost with your mind because you're among this just amazing things that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. And it's just easy. And so, Kevin, you have brought out so much in me over the last 10 years of our friendship because you are amazing at being able to see connections between whether it's movies or whether quotes from artists or whether it's a book or whether just things happening in the real world. You're able to make really cool connections about what's going on in your life or what's going on in just in humans and the way our brains work. And so, we just watched Hamilton a few weeks ago. And if you've never watched Hamilton, guys, it's hard to watch it without Kevin Ford here because he literally, after every episode, after he stops crying over something,
Beautiful show.
After every scene, you typically stop and you just give us a really in-depth perspective of what the artist is trying to communicate to us between all the sets, between the words. And so I was walking around Redwoods, totally just lost for 5 or 6 hours of my own thoughts. And I look back, I was like, Kevin really impacted me because I couldn't stop making connections about what was I seeing and a lot of the things that I preach to clients and to people about finances. And so it's a cool blend as far as like what you've taught me and what is always in my head, which is about helping people with their money.
I love this idea, though, that you started using the figurative, right? Like you're walking around in this real, literal space, but you found ways to use that to teach a lesson that's totally different. And so you're operating on the literal and the metaphorical. And you're going to present some of your your experience, right?
Yeah. So I took my phone out in the notes section and I started writing about some of the things that kind of came to mind. I was like, oh, this will be a really great, blog or a podcast someday. And so that's where we're going to share it today. So I have 6 random kind of connections that I made on this trip that I think could be a lesson for all of us about not only just investments, but also there's some amazing life, life things that I think the trees taught me along the way. So let's start with the first one. So picture this. I just got out of my car and I was walking down one of the first large hiking trails. And I was about maybe 15 to 20 minutes into this. And right in front of me was a massive redwood that must have just fallen a few days ago. So it was kind of slapped over on the ground. But what you could see is the whole massive diameter really right in your face. And you can see what the middle of the tree is inside of. So what was amazing about it is inside the middle of the tree, there was a really big ring. And then there was about thousands and thousands of teeny little rings that circulated that tree all the way out to the outside of its diameter. So just picture like one big circle of like how the trees started. And then one ring that built and built and built and built all the way out. So the first ring was small. And then as it kept going, that last ring, that diameter was really large. So Kevin, what do you think kind of came to mind for me during that moment? Because I couldn't stop staring at this. It was amazing, huge, like the size of a house. And it was all these rings that went out.
Well, thinking about finance and thinking about the podcast here, you've talked a lot about what you have always termed the magic of compounding and compounding interest. So I think the way you talked about how there's that starting point, that center circular ring, and that from that, I think those indicate years of life in a tree, right? Each ring.
Right.
So with each year, it got a little bigger. And then all of that mass is able to operate, photosynthesize, transport water, or whatever else. And a little bit larger is able to beget an even larger circle thereafter. So I'm thinking compound interest, how a thing grows in the course of its life.
Exactly. And I think why I like that demonstration for compounding is what kind of, what you just said was the next ring now is working to make that tree bigger on the next ring. Then you have the next ring that now it's larger. More things can happen in there to make the next ring bigger, then the next ring bigger. And when you think about that tree in the beginning, it looks small. But when you look at a 20, 30, 50-year span, the wealth that tree has built up, the size of that tree is enormous. And each one of those rings on the outside now is massive. So and when you think about this with money, like your first $100 that you invest, okay, if it moves 10%, it only moves $1. But later on the outside of those rings, let's say you're in year 30 and you got $1 million in your portfolio, right? 10% of that is $10,000, right? It's $100,000. So that 10% of $1 million is $100,000. You just made $100,000 on that compound because you had this big ring working for you. So I think it's a perfect metaphor for compounding because the money inside is building onto the next level and the next level and the next level. And the big compounding years, Kev, are later in life. So you got to really push through when you're young because there's only a little bit making it compound. But later on, when this tree is huge and your big pile of money is huge, then you have a lot of money working for you. So
that was good. I like that one.
Yeah. Ready for the next one?
I sure am. Let's do it.
Okay. Now these rings, which of course represent years of growth, right? They grow at different sizes, which was also strange. So there were some of these rings that were super, super small. Like the width was tiny, like 1/100th of an inch. You could barely see the ring. There are other times where that ring was really thick, which tells me a lot of things. Some years that tree grew pretty enormously. Other years, that tree hardly grew at all. And it's so evident in the rings. Some rings big, some really small. What do you think was the connection that I made there?
Well, I guess one of the things that comes to my mind from our last episode, we were talking about, you shared with me and we spoke about it with our audience, but there was a table of percent return of investment and this idea of like bonds and stocks and all that sort of thing. And I remember you pointed out that some years there's a lot of growth and some years it's only a really small amount of growth. And I know that in money investing, sometimes it's negative, and hopefully for this tree,
right.
It's negative. But that's kind of what I'm thinking is that different years in our market, as we invest and as we work, it could be a really big boom year where you get significant jump, like a wide circle. And sometimes it might be really small, but the important thing is that you keep growing.
Right. So I was thinking about really similar, Kevin. I was thinking about depending on the environment that year, like in that forest. Some years were really dry and there was a drought going on. Some years there was a wildfire. Some years on the other end were lots and lots of rain. There was a ton of this dense fog and mist that came across and kept these trees hydrated throughout their time. And those years were extremely fruitful, again, versus the dry years. And I think investing is the same way. Some years, whether it's the political climate or the cycle of the economy, some years the market's just not producing. You might see negative returns. You could see a stock market crash. You could see COVID happening. You could see a war that happens. There are some years that just the market's not moving, where they're not generating a lot of money. Other years, like last year, like where we saw over 30% growth in the stock market the year, that's one of those really thick bands that really made that tree really grow. So when I look at the S&P 500 returns that I shared the other day, 2006, the average return was 15.75. In 2007, 5%. Mm-hmm. 2008, negative 36. 2009, all the way up to 26 positive. 2011 was 2. 2013, 32%, big year. That's a big, big width of tree that's making it happen there. All the way to 2018, negative 4. 2019, it grew up 31. So based on the climate that's happening that we can't control, we cannot control, just like the trees can't control what the environment's happening. They stay still. They just keep pumping money in, right? And it will eventually work out for you. That's my thoughts and connections there.
Another good one. Look at you go.
On a roll. I'll tell you, I was like, Kevin really got to me here. Jeez. All right. The next one I thought was, I read on one of the long rides that I was on about how these trees start. And so similar to all trees, there's small seeds that end up falling off of the larger ones above into the grounds. And thousands and thousands of these seeds end up falling. But when you look around, not all those seeds, of course, end up turning into anything. Some did, some didn't. So what do you think there, Kev?
I mean, it speaks about how there's promise at the start of a thing, but maybe it takes off, maybe it doesn't. I'm reminded, though, of something you've always talked to me about, because we have some friends who like to try to do this, and you always say, don't do it. And it reminds me of picking like an individual stock. You used the image in our last episode about throwing darts at a dartboard and how you might be able to hit the board, but you can't hit exactly what you want. But here, too, I'm thinking about, if thousands of seeds are falling, but only 5 are going to take root, and then maybe only 1 is actually going to grow into one of those meaningfully huge trees, like an Amazon, a Google, what have you, then why would you ever try to pick it in advance? Yep. And then maybe that's why, like diversifying your investments. That's why you want to invest in the S&P 500 and not just pick one of those little seeds that's fallen, because we're not experts. And we're not going to know which one's going to take hold. We don't know which one's going to take root. We don't know which one's going to grow into one of those giant redwoods. They're all going to try, but it's better to diversify.
I'm so proud of you, Kevin. That's just beautiful. That was almost identical to what we talked about last week. What I was thinking about is, you've got, let's say, 500 seeds that fall from this, right? Are you going to be able to go and pick, that one is going to be the one that makes the big redwood?
Definitely not. They all look the same at the start.
Right. You're going to be able to tell at the start of 500 companies starting which one's going to be the big one. Right. So instead, and if you pick that one, I'm going to be clear, you pick that one and that tree takes off, you just got real rich pretty quick, right? Mm-hmm. But by doing that, you would have to be pretty lucky that company was going to be the one, right? Now we think about with the redwoods, why don't I just own all 5? What if I take a gamble on all 500 of those seeds that come down? That increases my chance. Now, there's going to be some in there that take off. There's going to be some that bring us up. There's going to be some that bring us down. But I'd rather not shoot for the 300-foot tree. I'd rather shoot for the average of that, because I'm not good enough to pick that one individual. And statistics show not many folks out there are. There are people that spend all their lives studying stocks and how to pick the right ones. And there's only a few people out there that have made a full career, 30-year career, at beating the average. The last statistic I saw on this was like 85% of investment managers who own mutual funds, right? Only 85% of them actually beat the average S&P market return. So for me, why would I even go after that? I'm just going to own the average. I'm going to make my 7 to 9% on average every year. Nothing sexy about this. Just going to keep doing it over and over and over again. So, yeah, that's that
I
one.
love it.
All right. Next one, Kev. Forest fires happen regularly in California. Unfortunately, there's one going on right now. And,
Yes.
we hear every summer that there's 1 or 2 large ones. And what was interesting is as Pauline and I were driving all across California, there was many spots, a lot of these beautiful forests that were, unfortunately, that were in a fire weather the last few years. And their trees were a lot smaller. And there was a lot of things that just looked destructive around, specifically around Yosemite. But what was amazing about the redwoods was I was reading that redwoods have survived thousands and thousands of years worth of many fires in those years. And so there are some redwoods that you actually walk by that still look like they have this black tint on it from fire.
Oh.
And these trees are still standing and they're all over the place. So I keep imagining how many forest fires have some of these large 300-foot redwoods have had to sustain over the course of their life. So another really big important part of that, Kevin, was what's amazing about these trees is the bark on these are really thick. And so the bark that protects the inside of these massive trees have really, really shielded off lots and lots of things that have happened to these trees over the years, whether, again, if it's a wildfire or not. So they have withstood these massive challenges that have occurred in these trees' lives because of the bark that they have and the size of their trees. So what do you think I got from that?
That's fascinating. I mean, obviously, fire, a raging fire is one of the most profound images we can conjure of, catastrophe, of danger, of destruction, all that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking about that. And that's actually got in my mind. We talked last episode about figuring out your risk comfortability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, that first image of you're going past a forest that had a really bad fire, and now there's some young new growth going on, but a lot of what was there is like gone. That sounds like a really severe, maybe like stock market downturn.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stay the course and you keep investing, that new growth could be really meaningful for you if you're playing a long enough game. But if you're the guy who's retiring in a year or two, that would be devastating. And maybe that's when you hope that you were invested more like redwoods, where maybe you've got a little bit in stock and that was a risk, but maybe you've also supported yourself by shifting some of your investment into bonds. So that even with that fire, you withstand, you stay strong. And sure, you might be a little burnt, but your bark is all the stronger for it. That's one thing that I was thinking about.
I actually was thinking, I love that one. Actually, I think that's a little better, which is no surprise about kind of where my mind was going. I really like the idea, like this forest over here that was devastated, like this was someone maybe young in their investment at 100% stock. Like you're going to have these times where a lot of your money goes down, but at the end of the time, that allows you to actually make more money because that grass now has had the fruits of ashes, being able to maybe make a better future later on. That's an interesting perspective. I was more thinking about the redwoods here have this thick bark, like an emergency fund that can withstand all the dangers that could possibly happen in your life. I was also thinking about insurance, and we haven't spoke about that on our episode much. The only thing I've shared with like how much I hate whole life insurance. But we haven't spoke about, insurance is really important for us to be able to think about so that if something in your life happens, it's not a catastrophic event that rips all your finances away. So this might be health insurance. Let's just say something really, let's say you are diagnosed with some type of cancer and you didn't have health insurance. Your finances are shot. But if you have an insurance, it's that thick bark that might be able to help you withstand. I was thinking about life insurance. What happens if, I have a family someday and something happens to me and there needs to be money to be able to take care of a future family? Having term, not whole life, life insurance may be a smart thing to do. A car, right? Let's just say your car gets in an accident and something happens to either your car or somebody, you hit somebody by accident or something. That situation could wipe you out, could kill your tree, could wipe out all your nest egg. But if you have a thick protective bark, whether that's an emergency fund or whether it's insurance, that can really help you withstand the fires that are going to happen in your life so that you can kind of chill and stay where you are. You're not going to see a lot of growth that year, but hopefully you're able to withstand that really rough time of your life or that fire that's happening. And 2 or 3 years, you can start rebounding again and start growing again.
Love it. And by the way, the English teacher in me loves that one, figurative piece that you just gave us with the fires and everything, it yielded so much in analysis, right? That I came up with something that wasn't what you were thinking.
Yep.
You came up with something that wasn't what I was thinking. And they're both able to be true. And they're both lessons that we should carry forward from this one image. So that makes it a really strong metaphor you just did. Well done.
Last one, Kev. So one other thing made me think about is like, why are the redwoods, why do they flourish in this certain area of the country, right? Why are they not here in Maryland? Why are they not down in Texas? Why are they not in Arizona in the desert? Why are they not in Vegas? Why are they in this northern section of California? And my study showed when I was researching this was it's the perfect environment for these trees to grow because of the weather, because of the way that the air currents bring in warm and cold weather, the way that there's a dense fog that ends up being across these trees for long periods of time throughout the day. And so it's in the right environment for these things to really grow and to take off. So these trees grew in the perfect environment for them that made them being able to flourish and be their best selves. So this really was, for me, a very holistic kind of life metaphor that I was thinking about, not necessarily money here.
Interesting. Before you said that, I was thinking money a little bit and was thinking about how, different accounts, if you're able to get everything just right and all that, then maybe it will grow more or less. But you then hit things like selves and you spoke more of like the collective. So I wonder and again, this is happy meter. It's not just money. You and I do not just care about money. We care about finding that balance between your most joyful, fruitful life and the ability to financially survive and like pay for that life. So I guess it's this notion that we all have, maybe we are the tree now. The tree isn't just our bank account, our retirement account, but the tree is literally ourselves. And we need the right environment. We need to figure out what it is that makes our environment verdant and healthy and ultimately allows us to be more fruitful. Is that about right?
Yeah, pretty much what I was thinking about here. I was like, where can you be in your life? Who can you surround yourselves with, whether it's friends or truthfully, one of the most important thing is the person you choose to be, with you for the rest of your life, your spouse. The environment that you choose to work in and to live in, these are all different choices that you get to make that can either make you a really small tree and not successful, or can, give kind of fuel to your energy and bring up your talents. And I really think a lot about, if people can be in the right environment where they are loved and nourished and pushed and challenged, how much better of a person that they would be, and also just a kind of money, like your employment. Like if you are able to be in a place that values you, that pushes you, that's around coworkers that challenge you. If you're in a place that has an area or a place for you to get promoted, right? That's also more income coming in and a better life. So I think for me, it's about environment, who you choose to surround yourselves with and who you choose and where you choose to live with can really either accelerate your life and you could be a redwood or not. And so that was kind of like a really deep thought that I had throughout this was like, it's really important for me to choose the right person I'm going to spend my life with. It's really important for me to be able to choose the friends that I get to learn from and grow with. It's important for me to have the right job that pushes me intellectually and keeps me emotionally stimulating, because that's how I know I'm going to be my best self and be my best version of a redwood.
I love that, Justin. That actually, if you'll let me be an English teacher nerd for a second, that last image reminds me of the moral of the famous satirical work Candide by Voltaire. And it ends with this group of people, the main guy Candide. They've had all these funny but like horrible struggles throughout this long journey. But at the end of it all, the phrase is, we must tend our garden. And this notion that we are the active agents in our lives. We choose who we surround ourselves with. We choose who's going to be with us when we journey or when we're at home, and the work that we do in our garden to bear fruit. And so it's important for us, whether, like you said, it's your spouse, it's your workplace, the job you do, the way you invest, all of this is tending your life's garden. And the better you tend it, the more growth there will be, whether we're redwood or something else. Yes, Justin, you're up there with the greats like Voltaire. Well done.
Thanks, Kev. Well, what I'm really excited about is next week we are launching, school's starting, coming up here. And we actually have a guest next week who I think would blend really well with the quote, that we just shared, which was about, wellness and having the right mental capacity, and being able to, to be the best version of yourself. And so next week we have a fellow teacher who joined Teach for America with us way back in 2011, who taught for, I think, 7 or 8 years in kindergarten in Baltimore City. And then she founded a company or a group called the Happy Teacher Revolution. She's an awesome person, and she's doing wonderful things to be able to help people be their best self. And so she's going to be on with us next week, and we're going to talk about the connection between mental wellness, specifically for teachers, but for everybody, and finances, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Dana Thomas with the Happy Teacher Revolution. I can't wait to catch up with her.
Yep. All right, Kev, well, you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you in a week or two when we have Ms. Thomas on.
That sounds great, buddy. It was great chatting with you, Justin. Thank you so much for sharing your story and allowing us to come to so many wonderful lessons.
And thank you for teaching me to actually be really reflective and intentional about like where my mind's going during those times. I really got a lot from it. And again, thank God I had you for Hamilton. So
the most important. Well, listeners, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.